This is an episode of my podcast, Self-Love and Spiritual Growth. You can find links to my podcast in the description below. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Self-Love and Spiritual Growth with Natasha Hynes, where I remind you that you came here to be the light in a dark world. So yeah, sometimes it's gonna hurt. Sometimes it might even feel like you're not gonna make it through, but you can. And you will. You're doing better than you even know. Welcome to episode 1. Today, I'm going to talk about my origin story. I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, whenever I discover a new person or I start following a new person, I really like to hear their origin story. Who they are, what they believe in, how they got to be where they are, why they're doing what they're doing. So I thought it was fitting to start this podcast with my own origin story. So I am a self-love coach. I'm a lot of other things, but for the sake of this podcast, that's what we're going to call it. What I do is I create courses, mostly video courses, and I write books and I write blogs and I make YouTube videos and record podcasts now, all related to personal development with a focus on self-love. And the reason I do that is because I hated myself for so much of my life. And I don't even think I knew that I hated myself. I don't even think I realized that that was the problem. It was only once I realized that that was the problem that I recognized that I could fix everything that was wrong in my life by solving that one problem. And when I did, I realized that I could teach that to other people. I also feel like that was absolutely my mission in life, that I came here with that purpose, even though I had absolutely no idea for the good majority of my life, that it just makes sense to the point where my first course, 10 Steps to Love Yourself, it's an audio program. It was basically downloaded to me in an instant. One morning I had to jump out of bed and run and get a pen and a paper because the entire 10 steps popped into my head in an instant. And that's usually when the channelings come in, right? When you're in mid-sleep wake, when you're in that theta state. That's where I was when this program came into my mind, and it was perfect. Not everyone's going to have a moment like that where they instantly channel an entire program in one moment, but you will notice at some point that there are key moments in your life that transform you. And they point you in a direction. And from that point on, you can start to look back and see where the dots connect about how you lived through certain experiences that at the time you didn't understand, or you didn't see the bigger picture, or that were excruciatingly painful, and that maybe you didn't see any meaning in them. And finally, when you look back, it all makes perfect sense that it was meant to be, that it was so perfectly meant to be that before you incarnated on this planet, you most likely planned to experience that. You might not think that you do, but before you come into this world, you plan on experiencing pain. Because pain is how we learn. It's how we grow. So I incarnated onto this planet with a narcissistic father and a codependent mother who is probably a first wave starseed of some sort. I don't know. I just know that she is extremely giving, always considering other people's feelings to the point where I'm like almost annoyed because all I wanted to do was learn to stand up for herself. And she devoted her life to helping people who had mental and often physical disabilities. She was also super into zodiac and tarot and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure she's more than human. My father might be a demon, though. I have a theory about narcissists anyone who's actually dealt with a narcissist or been abused by a narcissist. I'm not talking about someone who's kind of narcissistic, because we can all be narcissistic. I'm talking about someone with narcissistic personality disorder. I'm talking about an abusive predator. And they are way more common than you might even think. The reason we don't really have better statistics in terms of how prevalent they are is because they never get help. Because nothing's wrong with them. They think they're perfect and they don't need therapy, and there's nothing to fix and nothing to evaluate, and you're the one with the problem. So it's very rare that someone with NPD will ever be in a therapist's office. Therefore, they won't get a diagnosis. Therefore, we have no real statistics. But once you learn what they are and how to really tell if someone is NPD or not, when you've had experiences with them firsthand, you start to be able to see them a mile away. And that's when you realize that they are all over. It's scary. And the point I was trying to make is that once you really understand what someone with NPD is like, not only are they unbelievably cruel, like mind-blowingly cruel, but they're all exactly the same. Like they're so easy to predict when you really learn about them and heal yourself so that you're not as easily manipulated. When you get to that point where you can see them coming, you start to notice they're all the same. Even when you look at the warning signs, traits of a narcissist, what narcissists do, they all do the same thing in the same circumstances. If X, then Y. How are they all doing it? How are they all acting exactly the same? So my theory, my working theory, provable or not, is that either, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to agree with me on this, either they are demons or they have demonic attachments controlling them, or something to that effect, because it's the best explanation, I think, in my opinion. So basically, throughout my life, I had my self-esteem completely demolished by my father. Not only my self-esteem, but my self-identity. At an early age, he heard me singing. He always wanted to be a rock star. He had his little rock star agenda, but never had the balls to pursue it because he was too afraid of failing and what failure meant, especially public failure, right? So instead, what he did was he just kind of like dabbled in his basement studio and talked about himself as a guitar player like he's the next Joe Satriani. And then one day he noticed that his daughter could sing. His young, something like 10-year-old or 12-year-old daughter could sing well. And that's when my life stopped being my life and started being his prodigy. Basically, he started molding me into a pop star, told me that that's what my life was, that that's who I was meant to be, that he was putting thousands of dollars into my future, which in reality he was putting thousands of dollars into equipment that we didn't need, but so that he could show off his little toys to people and tell people how expensive and prestigious his little home studio was, so he can show off to people. We didn't need the good majority of the things that he spent money on, but he always told me that he spent so much money on me that I owed him. I owed him my life. At like 12 years old, I owed him my life because he decided to spend thousands of dollars and sacrifice for me to have the best. So every time I would talk about going to school for law or for medicine or anything else that I really liked, I was allowed to do that. In fact, I was expected to go to university to become a doctor or a lawyer, get perfect marks in school, while also becoming a pop star. But that if I ever gave up on trying to be a pop star, that I was a terrible person because I owed him my life. So I never had the opportunity to question who I was or what I wanted. I never had the opportunity to explore my own identity. I was nothing without him and his objectives and my career that he also kept sabotaging. Because every time someone came in with actual resources, like someone from a record company, he would see them as a threat to his control over me and was afraid that I would go off with them and he would be left out of the loop. And he would no longer be able to take credit for everything that I did and that I was. And that he would no longer be able to make money off of whatever I potentially could have brought in. So he sabotaged every opportunity that I had. He needed to maintain complete control. So I just kept chasing my tail because he also didn't have a plan. He did not have a plan. Like, I believe in big dreams. I have big dreams. The difference between my big dreams and his big dreams is the plan, the actionable steps, the realism behind how you're going to get from point A to point B. You want to be a rock star? Okay, how do you get there? Are you going to record an album? How many songs are there going to be? Are you going to do market research and see which songs are catchy? Are you going to pay for radio promotion? Are you going to get a manager? Are you going to hire a radio promoter? What exactly is your plan to get there? He did not have one. So he kept sabotaging me for years and years and years. He also reminded me before I performed every time I was about to go on stage, he would check me out and make me feel really uncomfortable as a teenage girl having to get dressed up and do my hair and do my makeup and then turn around for my father to be able to check me out to see how attractive I was and then critique my body and tell me how fat I was, even though I was not fat. Looking back at pictures, I was super hot and I was at a very healthy weight. But in my mind, because of all his criticism, his constant criticism and never telling me that I was beautiful or pretty, it was always to remind me how imperfect I was. In my mind, I started to believe that I was a fat, ugly ogre. I believed that I was disgusting. And I've overcome the majority of it. But there's still a residue that I'm still, to this day, trying to heal. To this day, I occasionally look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I look way better than I think in my head. So I had no identity, no self-esteem, no freedom, no choices, no control over my own life, and in constant pursuit of perfectionism. Eventually, in my very early 20s, I told him to go F himself. I got sick of being dragged around in circles. I realized that there was a pattern, that he had no plan, and that I wasn't going anywhere. I kept having nervous breakdowns because I kept getting old, because of my age, because I was getting older. And as you get older in the entertainment industry, especially in music, it gets harder. And also, he kept reminding me of that. So I decided to tell him to go F himself and that he wasn't allowed to quote unquote manage me anymore. The moment I did that, I became the scapegoat, his enemy. I went from the golden child, while he basically for the most part ignored my brother, to the complete opposite. I was now the scapegoat, the enemy, and my brother was his best friend. Not only that, but around that time, I was in night school trying to finish my advanced science and advanced math because I intended to get into the sciences and eventually go into medicine. And while I was in class, my father was forcing my mother to call me while I'm in class to force me to sign a makeshift contract that he had emailed me that would give him 20% of everything that I made for the rest of my life. My mother hadn't seen the contract. She just kept saying that he's telling me to tell you to ask you if you signed the thing he sent you. I knew what it was, but at the time I still didn't understand fully what was going on. I still didn't understand just how screwed up it was. Because when you grow up in a toxic environment, that's all you know. You don't know what healthy is. So if that's all you know, you don't even know that it's toxic. You just think it's normal. You think your parents love you. You think your father means well. But I did know that there was something majorly wrong with the fact that he sent me a contract asking me that. And I'd never signed it, thankfully. Thankfully, I was smart enough to not sign that. But I mean, even if I did, honestly, I don't think any judge in their right mind would have respected that contract, because even legally, it wasn't even a legally binding contract. But it was just a sign of a much bigger problem that I don't think any of us really understood yet. So because I was raised by a narcissistic father and had my self-esteem destroyed and didn't know what it was to be treated with respect, I didn't know how men were supposed to treat me other than by treating me like crap and expecting too much, or how people treat you when they love you. I had no idea what healthy behavior was or what healthy relationships were. So obviously, I ended up dating one narcissist or psychopath after another, chasing people because I was trying to earn their love so that I could finally prove to myself that I was worthy, reliving my daddy issues. And every time I had any type of relationship with someone else who treated me like garbage, it traumatized me even further. My self-esteem got lower. My self-worth. I had less expectation that I would ever be loved or treated well. I had more expectation that this was as good as it gets, that people are just going to treat me like crap and reject me and for the rest of my life, and that the best that I could hope for. This is not conscious thinking. This is just when all you experience is being treated poorly, you start to expect that everyone's going to treat you poorly because that's just the way it is. But it's not. And eventually, I came to that realization. So a few years ago, I was in some chaotic 9-month relationship with another narcissist, a covert narcissist, who started becoming more and more abusive. And every time I tried to stand up for myself, he would tell me that it was me that was a problem and I needed help and I needed therapy. So I went to get therapy for one brief session that basically changed everything. Because, and listen, if you are going to a therapist, if therapy works for you, then definitely keep it up. Absolutely. I am not in any way telling people that not to go to therapy, okay? But I am relaying another side of the story, another possibility that happened to me and happens to many other people. Because the problem is that therapists are not always good. They're not always compatible with you. And sometimes therapists are narcissists or psychopaths. Sometimes they can't help you. So as this guy was becoming more and more abusive, the first thing I did was I went to my closest friends and I asked them, I told them what was happening. I described everything, and I described some really gross, gruesome, terrible things that were said to me, that were done to me. And my friends looked at me like, well, I don't know. They didn't know what to tell me. They're like, well, he seems nice. Are you sure you're not making a big deal out of it? He seems to really like you. To the point where they were telling me, one of them was, I was literally telling him this crazy story that had just happened while, like, I'm sitting in front of my friend. He's in the same room as me. And my cell phone is blowing up. This abusive ex kept calling me over and over and over and over and over. And I showed my friend the phone. I said, this is not normal. And my friend's like, maybe he just really wants to talk to you. And I'm like, and if I wanted to talk to him, I would answer the phone. But because he wants to talk to me, I have to answer the phone. So he gets what he wants, but doesn't respect my space. That I'm not allowed to have boundaries. That I'm not allowed to say no. But my friend couldn't see that. He didn't understand it. And what I understand now is that the reason my friends couldn't see that it was not okay the way I was being treated was because they too were also in abusive relationships and toxic environments and grew up with toxic families. And like I said before, when you grow up in a toxic environment and that's all you know, you don't even know there's anything wrong with it. So my friends are giving me feedback telling me that maybe nothing's wrong. So I'm having this argument with this guy and he's telling me that I'm the one with the problem and I need to seek help. So then I went to a therapist. I went to a therapist with the intention, because I knew that it wasn't me. I knew that I wasn't the problem, but I made the appointment with the intention and I told the therapist on the phone when I made the appointment. I said, the only reason that I am coming to see you is because I want to know if I am in an abusive relationship or if I am sabotaging a perfectly decent relationship because of my own issues. And she said, sure, no problem. I even told her I don't want to do the whole first session evaluation thing because it's a giant waste of my time and money, because I literally just need to know, and if she wasn't going to help me, I would call someone else. I need to know if I am in an abusive relationship or not. So I booked my session with her. She said, sure, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you. I get there. I spend an hour with her. And I explained to her very coherently what was going on. And at the end of the session, instead of telling me, yes, you're in an abusive relationship. No, you're not in an abusive relationship. You might be, you might not be, but there's not enough information yet and we need to spend more sessions. No, she didn't say anything of the like. She said, yep, I guess I could see how you're so confused. So that'll be $150. Are you ready to commit to 3 months of therapy? I'm honestly not sure if she said 3 months, but that's the point. I'm like, what? I told you why I was coming here, and you didn't answer my question. and then you charged me for the hour. I got the same results from an hour with you after paying $150 that I would have gotten staying home and talking to one of my cats. In fact, I probably would have gotten better results talking to my cat because I would have known that I wasn't expecting any kind of feedback from another person, and I would have been more introspective, and I would have relied more on my own intuition. I probably would have given myself a better answer. So that's what I'm saying when I say that not all people are going to get the results that they need from therapy. And for me, I have seen multiple therapists and it never works. That's me. It doesn't work for me. In fact, while I was seeing this guy at some point, so this is all very synchronistic. It's all very serendipitous when you see the whole story and how everything came together perfectly to lead me into what I'm doing now. So while I'm seeing this guy one morning, and I had been doing my own personal development work and reading and watching seminars and motivational speakers and all this stuff, taking in all this information and teaching myself and meditating and working on myself for years before this moment. But while I was seeing this guy over the course of 9 months, okay, so that's like the bulk of a year. In the beginning, when I first started seeing him, I was a mess. He was also a mess, but the difference is, over the 9 months, I started to grow and heal and become a better person, and he was still doing cocaine in my bathroom. And I didn't even believe him when he told me, but I'm pretty sure he was. So one morning, I woke up and instantly had a download where my 10 Steps to Love Yourself program was downloaded into my mind, and I literally had to jump out of bed, run and grab a paper and a pen and write it all down because it was perfect. It came out perfect. And that became my first course several months later, which at the time I got the download, I still didn't even know that this was what I was meant to get into. I was still confused. I was still just trying to pay my bills, and I was still dating a jerk who was abusing me. So this download happened before I saw the shrink. And during that session, I had even mentioned it. I told her that I had come up with these 10 steps to reprogram your thinking of how you can go through these 10 steps and train yourself to have more positive thoughts about yourself and retrain your negative beliefs and get control over your subconscious programming. And as I was telling her this, she literally rolled her eyes. Who does that? What kind of a shrink? Therapists are not even supposed to have very visible responses to you because they're not supposed to influence you in case they trigger you, make you insecure or whatever. I'm not totally sure on how it works. I just know that they're not supposed to be have overly emotional responses to what you're saying. I'm pretty sure they're you can ask them. They'll have a better answer for you, but I'm pretty sure that therapists are supposed to remain neutral. Rolling your eyes at someone is not neutral. Rolling your eyes at someone, especially when they're trying to tell you something positive, that's crazy. There's something wrong. So this is why I have problems with therapists, because not only there was I very, very clear about the results that I wanted and the purpose of the session, which she did not provide, but she's giving me negative feedback towards positive things that I'm doing. And if I had been a more self-conscious, insecure person than I was in that moment, If I was the version of myself I had been 10 years before that, rolling her eyes at me probably would have crushed me. I would have walked out of there more depressed and confused than I was when I went in. So therapy does not work for everyone. For some people, it's transformative. And to those people, I absolutely support you in that. If it works, you do it. You do what works for you. But to anyone who has had trouble with it, can't afford it, doesn't like it, or for whatever reason that therapy doesn't work for you, there are other ways, and that is what I do. I provide other ways. So after I left that therapy session, I went home super pissed about what just happened. And then I thought about it for a while. I thought long and hard about what was happening. I really needed to figure this out. Was I in an abusive relationship, or was I in a normal relationship and I was just sabotaging it because I was miserable? But people are always saying love is pain and, oh, it's normal to argue in a relationship. So to what extent? To what extent? And if I was experiencing a normal, healthy relationship, I was ready to be single for the rest of eternity. But what I realized was, if I had a friend that told me that they were in a relationship where he was talking to her like I was being spoken to, treating her like I was being treated, I would tell her to get the F out. Run from this POS far, far away from him and never talk to him again, because he is a garbage person and you deserve better, way better. That is not worth your time, and that I would literally want to go get a bat and take care of him. So why then was I willing to take it? Why was I not willing to say that to myself? Why was I not willing to run from him for doing the same thing to me? And that's when I realized that I didn't love myself. If someone I loved came to me and told me they were being treated like this, I would want to defend them. But if someone treats me like that, I don't want to defend myself because I didn't love myself. And that is when I really went full force into my journey of learning to love myself. It is a journey. It does not happen overnight. You can't just decide to love yourself and then the next day you do. It takes work. It's a lot of reprogramming your subconscious beliefs. It's a lot of learning who you are. It's a lot of understanding how to create and enforce boundaries and how to read situations with people. How to know what's okay and what's toxic, what's healthy and what you should not allow people to do to you. So I hope that story was interesting to you guys. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you and good night or good day. See you later.